Hello there guys and gals, Natural Man here, and today I'm going to share with you my Magicka DK Tank. This is primarily a build that's based around pug groups and achievement carries. This is not the end all be all tank setup. It works really well with poor group composition. So that being said, we're going to jump into the stat sheet. 13.8 max mag with 2000 with, well, it's not, the stats are not showing properly, but anyway, let's see if we can't rectify that. It's glitched out or something. Oh, that's why. Back to the carrier. Here we go. 14k max mag, 2k mag recovery, unbuffed, 38 max health, 20k max stam, spell damage is resistance is 20k unbuffed, and goes higher with set that we're using. Using the tower, and we do have some divine pieces and red Frothgar for a little bit of extra sustain, and we're using the red Frothgar, but you can use the Bewitched Sugar Skulls. You can just swap out the tower for like the Atronach, and you'll have a little bit higher stats, but you know, it's really go-to tanking food. But like I said, this is not meta build, so to speak. Like I said, this is a fun build for, you know, pugging and achievement carries for people that might not understand mechanics or might not be able to do the achievements. You know, this build doesn't require a healer. You know, that's all in part of being, you know, familiar with tanking as a support role. This is, I would like to say it's a advanced build, but you know, you need to have some common knowledge of tanking before jumping in. You know, the sets and skills and everything as far as tanking goes, it all really depends on content and group composition. It's just the sets that, like I said, like I'm using here, is just you know, it's just a fun setup that, you know, you can carry pug groups and achievement carries. It makes it easy for the other group members. First set we're using is Brands of the Imperium, and you know, it doesn't matter what weapon it is as long as it's a one-hander. Reduce weapon damage to the target, spell and weapon damage for 5 seconds. We're using this decisive for the extra ulti-gen that in combination with a lot of passives and Monster Helm sets, is the ulti-gen on this setup is crazy. You know, it comes fast. So we're using one-hander Imperium on the front bar, and you can use Eben if you feel, you know, like I said, sets vary along with skills as far as tanking goes, but Javal's Guidance is the second 5-piece set we're using, and I'll explain more on why. Max stam infused on the shield, and the reason that it's not the same weapon sets, you know, like Imperium sword and board on both bards, is I'll explain. We're actually using a light waist, and we can break the set up to maximize our resistance, and we can allocate more champion points for mitigation. It really doesn't make a difference, you know, unless you're using a staff, about, you know, having the same weapons front and back bar, unless you're going to use a staff. Like I said, this is not optimized for an optimized group. You know, this is a setup that you can take unknown pug groups and, again, people that are looking for achievements and carry them through it. Just Gervald's Guidance, you know, is a really good set. As far as, you know, it is a healer set, but, you know, Alkosh is a DPS set, so, you know, you can utilize sets in your advantage on how you see fit. Like I said, we're using the light sash because it has the lowest armor rating, so in doing so we can run a heavy helm and medium shoulder to maximize our resistance. Max health enchant, and the enchants, you know, you can set them up and allocate your attribute points as you see fit. I mean, or you can copy paste using the triune glyph on the head and shoulders, and the chest infused with max health, divines on the small pieces. I know sturdy is, you know, go-to, but if you're, you know, very familiar with tanking, you can run just about any kind of trait you want. I'd run the divines for, you know, extra resources, and really on this build you only need to be blocking as far as heavy attack and big incoming burst damage. You know, this is not a perma block build. You know, that's I don't see that fit for most, you know, of the DLC vet dungeons, you know, unless, you know, it's really stressful on the group, and then you might have to do some perma blocking, but, you know, I usually don't. I don't have no trouble. You just need to block through really intense moments. And, you know, as far as stamina regain goes, that's all in passives and everything. Bloodspawn is a really OP monster helm. A 6% chance, and it really, because your tank, you're taking a lot of damage, so the procs are there. It's up a lot. Plus the 14 ultimate, and we're using decisive, so we can get extra ultimate from this proc. Resistance 6450. So with our 25,000 spell and physical resistance, and then plus the 6400, it puts us right below cap for spell and physical resistance. That way, if we get the minor resolve, we're right there at cap. So, you know, no points wasted there. That's part of the reason why the light sash, and we're heavy on all the pieces, but the shoulder is medium and the waist is light. Infused maxed health for the legs and chest, and then the infused triune on the helmet, just to help balance out our stats a little more. Yeah, you know, I really like the Imperium set, and Gervald Guidance does buff the Imperium set. We're using arcane and mag recovery on the jewelry, so we're getting a lot of mag recovery, and then we're using the red Frostguard, so our mag recovery is ridiculous. You know, you don't need a huge mag pool, you just need some good recovery. So yeah, 2400 mag recovery. Excuse me, which is really nice when you're trying to keep control of the battlefield as far as big giant ad pools. You know, when you're chaining and talons a lot of things, and then keeping your buffs up can be really strenuous on your mag pool. So, you know, mag recovery is really important as a tank. You don't need a huge mag pool, you just need good recovery. And you know, a lot of the skill sets, as far as the different skills that you use as a tank, you know, Gervald's Guidance is going to buff different skills because they are major and minor buffs. So that in part is where the Gervald's Guidance comes in play. as far as helping you with your sustain, and also helping buff the group as far as protecting them. We're using Burning Talons just for the extra DPS. You know, the small adds when you hit them with this, and then DPS synergizes, that's like, you know, insta death on a lot of ad pools. Green Dragon Blood, you know, this is a really big heal. You know, when you're low health and you hit the Igneous Shield, you can get the Major Mending, and then boom, Green Dragon Blood is huge crits. You know, as a Dragon Knight, you're pretty much aware of that. This is a good soft, I wouldn't say taunt, but like I have to aggro and also interrupt, and also get Magicka back when you use this. This works pretty good for the axes on AA, and also in big ad pools when it's really stressful, you know, on your resources. This is a really good skill to have. Hardened Armor, you know, for your major resist buff, and you get a damage shield as well. And Jervol's Guidance is also going to buff this skill. So now that 6 second shield is up to almost 8.5 seconds, and your major resolve goes up to 28 seconds on the tooltip, but it actually lasts longer than that. Also your Green Dragon Blood, because all the major buffs attached to it, the duration is increased, because on the, it says 23 seconds on the tooltip, but it's actually lasts for 32 seconds. So the buffs keep ticking while you have Jervol's Guidance equipped. Also in Earthen Heart with you know, the Magma Shell, it doesn't increase duration because it's not a buff or a shield for yourself, but for your allies the duration is increased up to 14 seconds. Also with Igneous Weapons, you know, 72 seconds is the duration, and it goes up to 1.2. You know, that's over a minute. You know, you can utilize that skill in low DPS situations in pug groups. And your Igneous Shield is almost 11 seconds, and then the buff from Major Mending goes up to 4 seconds. So, you know, you can actually get 2 Green Dragon Bloods popped from 1 Igneous Shield. Then I'll show you unequip 1 piece of Jervol's and go back. Igneous Shield. This goes down to 8 seconds, and it's 3 seconds. So you gain a second for the Major Mending, and you gain a few seconds for the duration, which is not a huge deal duration for yourself as a tank, but for your group, you know, almost 11 second shield on them, you know, an 8k shield on the DPS and the healers for 11 seconds is a pretty big deal. Also, like I was saying about the Imperium set, you know, the duration on that is not real long, and then the cooldown on it's like 14 seconds, and with Jervol's it helps a lot, and the cooldown doesn't really affect it too much. Now Aggressive Warhorn, you know, it's a 10 second duration for the major force, and the overall duration, so all that will be durational increased if you're familiar with healers that use Yorvolts. So yeah, you know, it's 30 seconds for the duration, but then the major force is 14 seconds, so you get an additional 4 seconds for the major force as well. And also because barrier is a damage shield, the duration on that goes to 42 seconds. So, you know, and then you generate replenishing barrier, you know, you regenerate ultimate and regain Magicka when the wars dissolve. So, you know, you definitely get the regen from this because of the long duration, and you also get the ultimate. So That's why we use decisive, and we're also using the blood spawn. And then we got the heroic slash, which gives us minor heroism, which that's also a duration increased. You know, it's almost 17 seconds, and that's buffed by your volts. So that's, you know, every time you gain ultimate, you know, by using decisive as well, you know, you generate a lot more ultimate. It's the ulti gen on this setup is insane, as you've seen in some of the clip videos. Now, because this effect from Turn to Evil is on the ground and not applied to the player, it's not buffed by your volts as far as the minor protection and minor endurance, which is not a huge deal. We use this skill mostly for the stun, but the other buffs are pretty good as well. You know, I usually lay this down and stand in it when I'm tanking a lot of ads or even tanking the boss. It helps with mitigation a lot. And then plus, when you're not blocking, you know, your stamina regen, because you get minor and major endurance. You know, even without the pot, Green Dragon Blood gives you major endurance, and then Turn Evil gives you minor. So, you know, that buffs your stamina regen a lot. And rage, pretty important as a tank. You need that range aggro to keep things on you and not your group. You know, things can kind of get away from you sometimes when you're tanking a lot of stuff. Like I said before, you know, this is the basis of tank. You know, you should have a general idea on tanking. I mean, if you don't, you know what I mean, just get in there, try it out. You know, you like tanking, you know, check out some YouTube videos. If you like this build and you know, you don't have a lot of friends that you run with, this would be a great setup, you know, for pugging. Cinderstorm is a really strong heal when buffed by major mending, and then plus if we get minor sorcery from a Templar, or you know, minor prophecy from Sword, you know, all the crits are increased, and it's pretty big healing. And you know, the radius is not huge. You can even put this on your group members and not yourself, to help them with the healing. If there's no healer in the group or a poor healer, you know, you can help the group a lot. You know, put this underneath of them and then pop Echoing Vigor. You know, that's a lot of healing on the group. You know, like I said before, if you know how to utilize this build a lot, you don't even need a healer. You can keep all your allies healed, let them focus on DPS. Passives, yeah, this is a pretty good passive. You know, you apply to Burning Status, you get some magic back, poison, stamina back. I mean, you have to be able to apply status effects. I mean, we don't have a big chance because we're not running a staff, which doesn't mean that you don't get the procs, but you know, these passives here are more or less for DPS purposes. You definitely want chains, and another, you know, chains is a really OP skill. Need to have chains. If you don't like the chains, you can also use Silver Leash, which is a fighter skill, which is a stamina based chain, so to speak. Passives for Draconic power, you definitely want all of these. Help a lot. You need these passives. Maybe the last one I don't have fully done, just because of how the armor is set up on this particular build. It actually puts this way over cap, so I took a skill point out to help balance it. You know, it's not necessary. That's why there's a skill point missing here. But you know, if you're not going to run the sets, then you put the skill point back in it and allocate your champion points properly to help you balance, you know, your resist out. And Earthen Heart, pretty important passives. You know, durations and battle roar. You know, we're using a lot of war horns, so that's a good source of resource management as well. You know, when you're using your ultimates. Mountain blessings, yeah, definitely want these. So, you know, you're generating the ultimate while in combat, while using Earthen Heart skills. And the Helping Hand skill passive is a pretty big one for tanking. So when you cast an Earthen Heart ability, you restore 990 stamina, which is just shy of 1,000 stam. And that's how you can really keep up your stamina pool in high stress situations when you have to do a lot of blocking. So I'm going to drain stamina pool here and really showcase how, you know, so we have a good mag pool, so we got plenty of mag, and this is actually a trash Magicka pots I have equipped. So I'm holding block and I'm just, you know, abusing Igneous Shield. Well, I hit the map button. Yeah. Just spamming Igneous Shield, and that's, you know, that's refreshing the damage mitigation on yourself and the group, and filling your stamina pool up while you're blocking. I'm gonna do it again. Completely drain that. And again, that's why I say the mag recovery is pretty important as a tank. You know, it don't take long to get enough back to pop skills. And you see me a lot, I'll use the hardened armor to mitigate damage because it's a cheaper skill. It gives a smaller shield, but it helps with resource management as far as your mag pool goes. But your stam pool, you know, if you have to block through a lot of damage, you know, you can just abuse Igneous Shield, and that, you know, proc the Helping Hands and give you stamina back. Now, of course, when you have the opportunities, you want to sneak your heavy attacks in and make sure you're getting your light attacks. Even as a tank, you know, light and heavy attacks are pretty important. You know, that's how you keep your resources up and keep your ulti gen going. And again, with the decisive traits, you get ulti back, insane amount of ulti. So your sword and board skills, I know a lot of people like shield wall. It's a really good skill. You know, if you plan on, you know, having to pick people up, or you're having a hard time managing your resource pool, then yeah, like I said, we're using Heroic Slash for the minor maim, and the ulti gen for the minor heroism, and Puncture Armor for your aggro and debuff on enemies and bosses. And then Defensive Stance is a really good skill for not only blocking and damage mitigation, but also it returns a lot of damage back to enemies and bosses. You want all your sword and board passes, very important as a tank. And like I was saying, Defensive Stance is an expensive skill, but it also helps in the DPS sense, because when you're able to reflect the projectiles aimed at you, you know, you're returning that damage back to a boss. So, you know, the amount of damage they put out, you can reflect that back to them, and that helps a lot with the DPS sense. That's another reason why, you know, properly timed war horns and properly timed defensive stance to reflect damage back can do a lot of damage as a tank back at the boss. That helps your group clear content. Your light armor passives, you only need the first 3 because we're only using 1 piece of light armor, you know, but it does help. Windwalker as far as medium armor goes, and then athletics, you know, you just a little bit of percentage, it does help. Not a absolute must, but it does help. If you got the skill points to put into it, I would suggest doing so. Of course, your heavy armor, you want all those skills, and then we're getting our Undaunted passive buffs. Undaunted metal, you know, your extra 6% to your max stats. It's very, very nice. Like I was saying about the light waist, medium shoulder, and heavy helm, you know, it helps you balance out your armor and resistance ratings a little bit better. It looks kind of weird on the weapon setup, but not a huge deal. You know, if you still want it to do the same sense, then you could go, you know, sword and board of Yorvals and just mix the jewelry a little bit and still use the light waist if you were going to use a staff. You know, if you want to use the ice staff or shock staff, you know, that's more for better optimized groups. Like I said, this build, you know, this particular tune is just set up for, you know, just carrying groups, and it works and very effectively. And also returns and does a lot of damage and helps buff the group's damage quite a bit. And of course, as support team, you know, your job tank take damage, debuff, and buff. So yeah, another point in being familiar with the tanking role as far as the support roles go. Like I was saying about Silver Leash, this is also a chain that you can unlock if you don't want to use the Unrelenting Grip. Unrelenting Grip also gives you Major Expedition, which is buffed by your role's guidance. The duration of it is, which is really nice when you need to move around the battlefield quickly. Like I said about Turn Evil, you know, you see me use that a lot in the other videos. You know, so you can stun and then CC with talents, and you can keep enemies in player area of effects and dots, and just, you know, help them melt things down instead of trying to single target individual enemies. Just chain them in, stun them, talons them, keep them there as long as possible. Enrage, Undaunted passive, it's a must. You can use Bone Surge, but it's a big drain on your stamina pool, and it really needs to be synergized to have full effect for your group. So somebody needs to be close to you to hit that synergy. You know, it is buffed by Yorvals. It's 8.5 second duration on the damage shield, but we already got enough damage shields for the group. So. And you can also use Energy Orb if there's no synergies in the group and you see the group struggling, you see a lot of heavy attacking going on, you know, you can put Energy Orb on either your bars as far as flex spots go and really help the group with sustain. And you can combine this with like Symphony of Blades to get the proc, or you don't like orbs, it's a big drain on your magic pool, then you can use Blood Altar or Blood Funnel, which is Undaunted skill. Like I said, Aggressive Horn, you know, a must, has a support role. You know, this is pretty much the only ulti that I use. I have Barrier on my back bar just for passives, and every once in a while I might use Barrier if I see the groups getting ready to get in trouble. Like I said, you get some ulti and magic back from that. Not really needing any of the assault passives. The damage shield is pretty good, and the duration is insane by Yorvals. Efficient Purge can be very helpful and important in different content, like Black Rose. You know, you need quite a few people with Purge on their bar, so you know it is a big drain on your Magicka pool, but it is a really useful skill as a tank. I am an Imperial just because you get really good stats with the Imperial, and plus you get some resources back for taking damage. You reduce the cost of all your abilities. When you deal direct damage, you heal yourself, and that is buffed by, you know, your healing received and healing done. So that's what the 600 and 700 ticks for a heal and Magicka and stamina that you see pop. So all that's buffed. Imperial's a really good tanking class. It really is. I know a lot of people like their Nords and Orcs and everything, but you know that all again deals with the composition of the group. And for this particular setup and build, Imperial works very nicely. Got some points into provisioning just to help with our food duration, and then of course you want your alchemy for your medicinal use. And because again of your volts, even the trash Magicka pots, like the duration 37 seconds for major intellect, and we're going to take off one piece of your volts. And now it's 28.7, just about 29 seconds. So you know, with combination of your volts and then medicinal use, and you can really get a decent uptime with trash Magicka pots, which I use a lot on my tank, just because you know I don't have trouble surviving, just keeping up your magic pool, and everything's good and honky-dory. But you know, high stress as far as hard content goes, then yeah, you know, you're definitely gonna want your tripods to help you with the block. You know, and your tripods, look, with your volts 1 minute, you know, well over, you know, the cooldown period. So even when the cooldown is already expired, you know, buffs are still ticking. So you know, the pot's there and ready. When your resources are low, you just pop the pot, even though your buffs are still ticking. Really crazy sustain with the setup. You know, the difference in the two potions, just, you know, as far as the regents go, you know, it's just making potions. You can have some 1.2 minutes, and you know, of course that's buffed with your bolts, but it doesn't matter as far as that goes. You can use the cheaper pots. Like I said, I use a lot of trash Magicka pots just for the easy stuff, like the overland zone dungeons and stuff like that. I don't even use good pots in there. You know, sustain's good, and just, you know, knowing how to tank, you know, just being really familiar with your build. And like I said, you know, this is not meta. This is not by any means, you know, set in stone as far as, you know, I'm not telling you this is what you need to run for everything, because that'd be false. You know, Eben Alkosh or Alkosh and Tories and things like that is more for good composition and group symmetry in trials and vet trials. You know, this setup's not going to work for you in vet trials. You know, not even really off tanking. You know, you need to be more like, you know, Symphony supporting the group as far as that sense go. You know I said this is really good support for pug groups and people that are unfamiliar with different things. You know, you can carry them through it with this setup. But yeah, again, tanking is very dynamic as far as skills and sets go. You know, it just depends on content and the group composition. Again, I know I repeat myself, but you know, that's important. You know, having a lot of sets. It's kind of like healers. You know, you need quite a few sets if you're going to tank all content. Like I said, this is pretty much the only ulti that I use. It really should be the main ultimate that all tanks use. I know survivability for some people can be tough, but that's all in part of having experience as a tank. You know, if you feel like, you know, you want to get into tanking and everything, then, you know, this setup, you know, might work for you. But it's a fun build, and like I said, it works really great for pug groups and achievement runs and carries and things like that. You know, I've carried quite a few people through hard content with this setup, you know, even though it's not an optimized group. So champion points, again, not set in stone. I don't change them much unless I'm doing different content. You know, it varies for different trials. There's only a few 4-man contents where you really need to change your champion points, but for the most part, this is the way I keep it set up. And like I said, you know, got a few into heavy armor focus just to help balance our resistance out. It got 0 into the spell resist just because we don't need it. Got some points into the ritual tree to help buff echoing vigor more so, and we're getting the last stand passive, which, believe it or not, because it is a major buff, is increased and buffed by Yorvald's guidance. So, you know, you go really low health, you're getting a really insane ulti-gen. You know, 3 ultimate every 1.5 seconds for over 11 seconds, and it's got a 20-second cooldown. So we're going to go back, unequip one piece of Yorvald's, get back in here, and now it's 8 seconds. So it was a little over 11 seconds. So, you know, the duration is increased by a few seconds, you know, which is in turn, you know, 6 more ultimate, and then having decisive traits, you know, you can get more ultimate back that way. So potentially you could get, you know, quite much ultimate if you did go low health, which, you know, you really shouldn't be as tank, but, you know, we're getting the perk anyway. This here, the points here, just help with your green dragon blood, and also with helping the DPS part with like talons and different Magicka based skills that do damage, like your unrelenting grip, you know, that does do flame damage. Got 81 points into Shadow Ward, so we don't really need a whole lot of sturdy. You know, this is reducing block by a lot. Got some points in tumbling. You know, you do need to roll dodge every once in a while, just don't stand in stupid. Leftover points in the Shadow Ward. Tenacity 49, just an even number. You know, you get some good return on your heavy attacks. Arcanus, you know, anything over 75 is pretty much a waste because it costs so much to get that. You know, you got to put 100 points in to get 1 more %. Like, you could allocate that a lot better. 40 Warlord, you are going to be breaking free and need to break free, so a 16% cost reduction into that. But yeah, like I said, not set in stone, and this is a fun build. And if you like it, and you know, you tend not to run with groups and things like that you're familiar with, then this would be a really good tanking setup for you to help you get through those pug groups. So again, thanks for watching, and if you like it, pick it up, hit that like and subscribe. Thank you.